now we are moving on to the next presentation, and then at the end of the presentation, my job will be done. I will hand over to the Imam to moderate the discussion, inshallah. But before I go, we will talk about Muhammad Rasulullah's love. We will hear what Sheikh Ibrahim Nayas has to say about him. About him, I mean. So now we are going to have tax reform system, impact on the social economic life of Nigerians, to be presented by Professor Jemila Omolara Yakub. Prof is a professor of economics in the Department of Economics, Lagos State University, Ojo, Lagos. She attained her BSc degree in economics from the University of Ilorin in 1987, and then MSc from University of Lagos in 1991, and PhD from the University of Ibadan in 2010, all in economics. Professor Jemila is a scholar of the African Economic Research Consortium in Nairobi, Kenya. She is a former Amira of the Criterion, an association of Muslim women in businesses and the professions, that of Lagos districts. She is a one-time national secretary of the Criterion. She's also a former Amira of the Muslim Student Society of Nigeria, Lagos Area Unit. She's a member of the Marriage Counseling Committee of the Criterion, Lagos District. She taught briefly at Eko Boys High School in Lagos State, worked as an accountant at the Lagos State Polytechnic before moving to Lagos State University, where she has been lecturing since 1998. Professor Yakub, which means Prof. So Professor Yakub, I didn't want to. Professor Yakub has published widely in both local and international journals, mostly in the area of monetary economics. Professor Jemila Omolara Yakub is currently the head of Department of Economics in Lagos State University, Ojo. She is a mother and a grandmother. You are very welcome, ma'am. Somebody praise Muhammad.
Adinani Muhammadu Zilianami
Muhammadu
Anami
Adinani Muhammadu Zilianami
La 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 bibi mutada Mani lama yartada Wadinuhu ladhi dada Illahu fi azali Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to apologize because I had cough and that's affected my voice. So thank you, sir. I'm supposed to discuss tax reform in Nigeria and the impact on the socio-economic life of Nigerians. As we all know, when we talk about tax, it's collection from the people by the government to make provision for the people. So definitely, if there is a reform, it will definitely affect the life of the people. So I'm going to start by looking at the background. When we look at Nigeria, every government wants to attain sustainable development. Year in, year out, whenever we have an election, there will always be a promise of better life for Nigerians. More jobs, better healthcare system, better education, but all this revolves around money. And we know government does not have a business of its own. We always say government has no business in business. So if that is the case, it means they have to rely on money collected from us. So that is where taxation comes in. Taxation here means government collecting from us to make provision for us. And the essence is tax is indispensable. No government can work without tax. Even in Saudi, where they said there is no tax, we remember that people pay zakat, which is another form of tax. So there is no government anywhere in the world where people will not pay tax. Otherwise, the government will not have the necessary resources to carry out its statutory functions. So tax is indispensable tool for public finance. However, The expectations of Nigerians have not been met with taxation. People are disillusioned. People are not happy. People are not willing to pay tax. It is in Nigeria that you see people trying to evade tax, trying to underpay tax. And why? Because they don't trust the government. They are not sure the taxes will be used judiciously. If you see those of us sitting down here, apart from the civil servants and those in the formal sector, if you ask how many people pay tax, we see that majority of us are not paying tax. And those of us that are paying, we are underpaying tax, especially for businessmen and women. And the reason we have said is that there is lack of trust, there is lack of confidence that our tax resources will be used effectively. So let us now look at what is the socio-economic realities that we find ourselves in Nigeria today. We have slow economic growth rates. The growth rate in Nigeria for the past 10 years is around 2%, which is less than the world average. Everybody wants Nigeria to grow, but unfortunately, Nigeria is growing sluggishly. Also, there's high inflation. Inflation is above 30% in Nigeria. Unemployment is very rife. Poverty rate very high. Over 60% of Nigerians are living below the poverty line. This is our reality in Nigeria as of today. Also, the government has a challenge of low revenue, and they have to resort to borrowing. There is no government since we entered into democracy that has not been borrowing. Even Obasanjo that got debt relief, before he left, he was also into debt, because some things must necessarily be done, and you have to do them either by taxing the people or by borrowing. And tax is usually not politically expedient, especially for politicians, because if they increase tax, people will revolt against them, they will not vote them in power. So they have to resort to borrowing. But how sustainable is this borrowing for us? Presently, the chunk of our revenue goes to debt service. That tells us that it is unsustainable. We cannot go and continue to use our resources to finance debt. What are we going to have for our own development? So government has no choice but to go back and reform tax. So now, still on our reality, the personal income tax in Nigeria is less than 8% of our GDP. And globally, personal income tax on the average is usually about 30%. But our own is less than 8%. If you take UK, for example, if you earn 1,000, you are sure that you are going to pay about 300 naira out of it as tax. But in Nigeria, if you earn 1,000, you pay 8% maximum. Yet, we want the services that are rendered in UK. We want free healthcare system, free education. We want social security. Where will the government get that resources if we don't pay for it? Somebody must pay for it. No free lunch anywhere in the world, even in Freetown. Somebody is paying for the lunch. So, why do people refuse to pay tax or underpay tax in Nigeria? I've mentioned knowledge. People don't have enough knowledge about the tax system, and the tax system is complex, as Sister Riskia mentioned. Also, there's social and individual norms. People don't feel they should pay. Then legitimacy. Some people don't even believe that this government, is not my choice. But we have to realize that whether it's your choice or not, once the government is in place, it's your government. It's the government of Nigeria. So we don't have a choice but to cooperate with them. Then there's also fear. Will I have voice? If I pay tax, will they listen to me? Does my opinion matter on where the tax is spent? These are things that affect our willingness to pay tax, because there's an opinion poll that's looked at whether Nigerians are willing to pay tax or not, and it is concluded that Nigerians are not willing to pay tax. And those are some of the reasons that they have put forward for not wanting to pay tax. but we don't have a choice. We need to pay tax. Now, coming to the tax reform, yes, the NTB, the Nigerian tax bill, Sister Rizky has mentioned the 4 bills that were passed to the National Assembly. This bill is meant to reduce or to eliminate 11 laws. Because of time, we'll not be able to mention them. So, and the reason is they are trying to harmonize the tax that we pay so as to make it simple and not complex. So 11 laws or tax acts will be removed. Then also 13 laws will have to experience consequential amendments. That is, they will be changed fundamentally to ease tax collection and improve efficiency in tax. Now, what are the objectives of the new tax bill? Number 1, to address the problem of multi-layer tax. She has also mentioned that too many taxes. Let's harmonize them into fewer ones. Also, to consolidate the various legal frameworks that guide our tax system. Then to expand the country's tax base. Government is interested in increasing revenue and they don't necessarily want to raise the rate. So what they can do is to increase the base so that they can have more revenue. Also, to generate sustainable revenue streams for national development. That cannot be overemphasized. Then to address the complexity in the current tax system and to enhance tax compliance. They want everybody to comply voluntarily. They don't want to be chasing us about. And I'm sure if you understand the tax system, there will be voluntary compliance. If we are sure that our tax will be used judiciously, there will be voluntary compliance. So they want to enhance voluntary compliance with the tax system. So let us now go to impact. How does this reform impact Nigerians? So we are going to look at the impact on 3 aspects: on the corporate world, individuals, as well as the nation as a whole. Talking about the nation, we look at the states. How does it impact them? And how does that translate to better life for Nigerians? So let us look at, for corporate organizations, I've identified about 4 areas by which the tax reform will benefit or will impact corporate organization. Number 1, the new tax law seeks to facilitate the ease of doing business. Nigeria is listed below in the ease of doing business. People complain about a lot of registration points. You have to register with CAC, register with this, register with that. How can we harmonize all this? Can we harmonize our identification structure so that once you have a card, that card can identify you, your bank account, your area where you live, the kind of business you do, your tax status. Are you paying tax? Are you eligible to pay tax? Or are you evading tax? So this is one of the ways by which the reform will affect businesses. So as a business owner, you know, it will impact you. Because one of the things that the bill says is that you need to make tax returns, whether you are paying tax or not. Even if your turnover is less than 25 million, you are not supposed to pay tax. But despite that, you still have to make returns to say, okay, this is the profit I made. This is my turnover for this year. I didn't make profit, or my profit is low. I can't pay tax. Fine, but make returns. Without returns, it's going to promote transparency, so that when you make profit in the future, you will not be able to escape paying tax. So we need to make return as a business organization, whether you are paying tax or not. Number 2 is that the bill is projecting there will be a reduction in taxable income of companies by increasing the allowances that are deductible from the company's gross earning. So there are some things that the bill has introduced that you have to deduct before you calculate your tax. So with these additional deductions, it means at the end of the day, your taxable income will be lower. So this is going to benefit the business organizations, especially the small-scale businesses. Also, it supports SMEs by streamlining the tax. She has also mentioned it. Then also, the bill is proposing the elimination of minimum of 1% tax for companies that make or that did not declare profit. In the past, if you don't declare any profit, you still have to make 1% tax deduction. But now that has been eliminated. If you don't make any profit, you don't pay tax. No minimum of 1% tax as before, which is a relief to small scale businesses especially. Many small scale businesses are struggling to survive, especially with the harsh economic environment we find ourselves. So for such businesses, no profit, no tax for you. Now, also, the bill is proposing a reduction in the corporate income tax from 30 to 27% in 2025. So from this 2025, the corporate income tax is going to reduce to 27.5%. Then from 2026, it will go to 25%. And if you look at this compared to other African countries, it's lower. For example, in South Africa, it is 27%. In Kenya, it is 30%. So if we go to 25%, that makes Nigerian businesses will be competitive compared to other African countries. So that can draw companies to Nigeria, because you compare. If I work in South Africa, what tax will I pay? 27. If I work in Kenya, I will pay 30. So if I come and set up my business in Nigeria, I will pay 25%. So that will create more jobs for Nigerians, because as more companies move in, they will employ our people. So that is a plus for Nigeria. Then also, the exception of companies that have turnover of 25 million, that has been mentioned by Sister Riskia, which means many of our SMEs, our young ones that are just setting up companies, they will have tax relief. They don't need to be thinking of, oh, I will pay. They can have a lot of time to develop their businesses, and that will help the nation as a whole. Then also, harmonization of tax. Now, development levy will be introduced, which is going to be 4% initially, and that will be reduced to 2% over time. Unlike before, companies were paying third fund tax, that is tertiary education tax, they are paying NITDA, they are paying NASENI tax. All these are many. But now, government has decided to harmonize it into just one development levy of 4%. It is this development levy that those organizations will now draw from. They don't have to be running after companies to come and pay. So that harmonization itself is a relief, and it is proposed that before 2027, it will become 2%. So it's a big relief for companies. If you know what companies pay, this will be a big relief for them. And with that, companies can have more fund for expansion. By expanding, they will employ more people, they will produce more, and the economy as a whole will benefit. So let's go to individuals. For individuals, how does this tax reform, how does this tax reform impact individual? Yes, individuals will pay less. Minimum wage is now 70%. If you earn 70,000, if you earn 70,000 and below, you won't pay tax. But I don't see any advantage much to the individual, because it is still around the minimum wage. Prices have gone up, so even if they say 70,000 should not pay tax, it doesn't bring any relief to individual. So I think after that 800,000, the next level, which is 2.2 million paying 15%, is too high. I think that should be reduced to 7.5%, given the rate of inflation in Nigeria. The value of money has really been eroded. So we cannot be collecting 15% for those that are earning 2.5 million naira per annum. So that is too high. So government should reduce that to encourage people to pay tax. So other relief, rent relief, rent relief is now 200,000. Fine, but I think it is still low. Those of us living in Surulere, you know how much rent you are paying. I think that rent relief should be jacked up a bit to give people relief actually. Then there's also the exemption of tax from capital gain. If you sell property, you sell your shares, and it runs to about 50 million. As long as the capital gain is not more than 50 million, you won't pay any tax. So those of us who are inheriting our fathers, our mothers, whatever, If the value of the inheritance is less than 50 million, you won't pay any tax on it, unlike before where you have to pay capital gain tax on any amount you inherit. So this is also a relief to people. So let me quickly move because of time. So for the nation, the reform is actually beneficial for the nation, because one is the harmonization of the development levy is going to encourage transparency and accountability, unlike before where people pay different taxes and government is not even able to monitor enough. Now, since it is harmonized into one development levy, they can know what goes out from that account and what comes in, which will be good for the nation if you follow it properly. Then also the VAT, the review of VAT on food item, health material is 0 now, whereas for luxury goods VAT will be increased gradually. Fine. So for those of us consuming luxury, we should be gearing up to pay more. The good side about VAT is that now it will now be allocated based on contribution. And what is the significance of that for the nation? It means every state will now have to struggle to contribute more into the national purse. The more you contribute, the more you get. It's no longer based on population, so it is based on contribution. So this is going to enhance healthy competition among states. Every state will want to contribute more, so which is very, very good for the nation. However, we should expect higher prices due to VAT, because as VAT is increased up to 15%, definitely it's going to reflect on prices. But we also enable us to prioritize. We have to know what is important for us. So for the poor masses who spend the higher proportion of their income on food, transportation, and accommodation, they don't have much problem. But for those of us who spend on luxury goods, we should expect to pay more. So potential, let me go to the way forward. Number one thing that needs to be reviewed is the fact that they are saying if you want to make a claim for tax refund, you need to write to tax authority. It is good, but the tax authority, they have to go digital to facilitate that relationship. Because if you write and you don't get response, no relief, definitely it's going to affect your willingness to pay tax. So they have to be digital about that and make sure that it's automated, so that as soon as you write, you get response and you'll be treated. So with that, you'll be willing to pay tax. Then harmonization of the tax website. The tax website should be accessible by banks and other ID issuing agencies. So you should be able to track people. So which means all our organizations need to be harmonized. Once you tap online for any number, it gives you the dossier of the person. So even when they say banks should report anybody that transacts up to 25 million, if you don't have information, how do you transact? If the banks are not linked, somebody has an account with First Bank, with Union Bank, and you are not linking them, you will not be able to track. So there should be a way of harmonizing all our identities so that the tax reform will be effective. Then I will end by appealing to us that we need to cooperate with the government and be tax compliant. If you don't pay tax, you don't have any moral justification to ask how money is spent. So it is when you pay that you hold the leaders accountable. Even if I pay 1 naira, my money is there. I want to know what is used for. So let us pay our own tax, do our own duty, so that we can hold our leaders accountable. If you look at what happens, local government, they are not working. Many states are not working, and people are not holding them accountable because they don't believe that they have invested anything in that system. So if you have invested in the system, then you should be able to ask questions. Then also, government needs to do a lot of sensitization. I don't need to emphasize that. Corruption and unwanted display of wealth by government officials should be curbed. You want people to pay tax, and we can see what our tax collectors are doing, wasting money, displaying wealth unnecessarily. Somebody that was poor before he became a chairman of local government, within 1 year in office, he acquires a lot of cars, new houses. Then you start to ask, is this not where my tax is going? So the government officials have to actually behave in a responsible manner so as to encourage voluntary tax compliance. Then the process of claiming tax, I've said that, public enlightenment, identification. So Nigeria should gear up to pay tax given the new tax bill, as no one can avoid tax. So avoidance is now very difficult if the bills are implemented to the letter. Low-income earners and small businesses may not be taxed, but they have to make tax return. VAT allocation to states will be based more on derivation than equality. So let every state governors put on their thinking caps. How do we generate more revenue? How can we diversify the production base of our state? Then also, I pray that 2025 that we have just entered is going to be a better year for us as individuals and as a nation. That Nigeria may prosper is in the hands of all of us. May Nigeria prosper, and may we also prosper as individuals. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Somebody praise Muhammad. Somebody praise Muhammad Rosulullah.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Somebody praise Muhammad.
Alayhi wa sallam.
Our dear Prof, Jazakillahu khaira. May Allah bless you. We learned quite a lot from you. Now I know where it concerns me, and I know if you were listening, you should know by now if you are going to be taxed or not. So everybody knows where it concerns them now. Somebody praise Muhammad Rasulullah.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Eba mi yombo anabi yin da kiri yi o be yombo Muhammad.
Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Muhammad ati re anabi latenkan. Somebody praise Muhammad. So we are now moving on to the discussion and the panel of discussants, and to be moderated by our Imam Shafi Abdul Karim Majemu. The plan now is for us to end before Asri. That's the plan now. May Allah make it easy. So I welcome the Imam to moderate the discussion panel.
Salamu alayka Mulana Rasulullah. Salamun alayka Mulana Rasulullah. Wafiqtu bi Rabbi jadali bil lata'ifi wa bil muhtafal mukhtar.
Please, we need more mics. More mics. We need extra.